Hi, this is Clint. I wanted to make a short video series for accessibility testing. Now, when I say testing, I know that can be sort of a loaded term depending on what kind of software testing you're doing. It can be really complicated where you're writing scripts out and it's a really involved process and you need to be an expert at it. The kind of testing I'm talking about is everyday just review of software or websites to find out if it is accessible to for screen readers or accessible for people with disabilities. So this is in the training that I do. I have a PowerPoint, and I just wanted to take out some segments of it and show you just sort of the basis of what we're looking for. So we'll skip ahead here. And so with accessibility, a lot of times the word gets tossed around and it can almost lose its meaning. If we boil it down, accessible just means that somebody has access. So I've got a picture of a wheelchair ramp here and a set of stairs, just so to sort of illustrate that this set of stairs or this upper level is accessible to a wheelchair user because there's a ramp. And that's really all it means. When we're talking about the digital world, it gets a little bit more complicated, but it's the same concept. So if a website is accessible, we mean it has the right kinds of structures in place for somebody that is blind or low vision, or really just somebody using the keyboard to navigate. Only they can navigate it and they have access to that tool or software product. So understanding where things can go wrong, this is a really boiled down simple version of just the process of communicating. You've got a sender and a receiver, and they're sending messages back and forth to each other, and understanding that there's something that happens and interrupts that message, or just makes it so the message can't reach it to the receiver. That's what we're trying to sort of solve. So the things that we look for, and this is by no means a comprehensive list, but these are pretty basic. You could look at videos, text documents, websites, apps, or online courses. In my case, we do a lot of that, and the list could go on and on and on. They're just some examples. So a good idea is to break things down into sort of their primary functions and secondary functions. So for example, if we're talking about Amazon.com, Amazon has a lot of primary functions, and depending on what you need to use it for, the primary function might change, or it might be different for different people. So it's important to understand how you're using it or how your organization's using it in order to understand what those functions are. So first, for example, Amazon, if I really boiled it down to a primary function, I'd say it's about making purchases. Secondary functions of Amazon could be writing reviews. They could be, watching movies, reading books. There's other sort of functions of Amazon. So for your primary function to work, there's going to be a whole process that leads you up to that. So in order for me to purchase successfully on Amazon, I'm also going to need to know how to find the product I need. So the search feature, being able to read about the product, being able to use the shopping cart and insert credit card information, that kind of thing. All of that is encompassed in the essential functions of that software. And then there's going to be a lot of secondary functions, and the list could go on and on. But depending on what you're using that software for, it's important to understand what you primarily need to do and what is sort of a peripheral thing, and that'll help you do a little bit of triage and figure out where you need to spend your efforts. So we'll skip ahead here a little bit. So common issues that come up, and these depend on what kind of content you're looking at, but no captions can be an issue, especially for videos, obviously. No alt text or poor alt text can be an issue. No landmarks, so we're talking about headings and regions, and these are all tags. Low contrast in color, and that can be often overlooked, but it's an important thing to notice for accessibility. Not keyboard navigable. That is really, really important, and it can be difficult. So that's why I wanted to make a video or series that sort of went over how exactly to do that, and I'm hoping it'll be helpful. And yeah, last but not least, Flash based. If a website is Flash based, there's the nice part is you don't have to do any testing because you already know it's not accessible. So that's sort of the quick rule of thumb there. Okay, so I had an example of a Flash based website. You can Google it and find one. Wave is a tool by an organization called WebAIM, and it's a nice tool because it helps us to sort of open up a page, a website, and look at some of the elements, and it'll give us some information. You're still going to have to understand and sort of use your own reasoning to decide if it's accessible, if it's not accessible, and what needs to be worked on, but that'll at least get you a step in the right direction. So there's a lot of different ways to do testing and a lot of different standards to go by. WCAG 2.0 is sort of a universal standard to go by, and the only problem I have with that is that if you're new to testing for accessibility, or you're the accessibility coordinator or something in your department, it can seem really overwhelming. So I think it's important to boil it down to what do you need that software to do, and if things aren't sort of in that primary function, don't worry about them as much, and that really makes the elephant a little bit easier to eat. So what we're going to look for are what I'm going to call blockers, and this is any instance where a user is totally stopped from completing the primary function of software or website or application. If they can't do the primary function, then it's not going to do us a lot of good. That's when we would say it's not accessible. A red flag would be something that is a pretty big issue, but a user can, through some effort or through some training, get around and complete the primary function. This is something that it's still not accessible, and I wouldn't be happy with that product, but it's good to understand how it does work. So if you have to get somebody instructions or get some training for users, then you'll know what to address. So yellow flags can be a really big sort of section there, and it could be anything from bad alt text, not great alt text, to maybe the read order of a document isn't the best, so it can be cumbersome. Someone can get through it. It probably takes a little bit longer than it should, but technically it works. For these things, I'll still point them out if you can go to a vendor, or if you know the programmer who's writing the software, point them out, because it's going to make the product better and more usable. But being able to sort of triage problems into this sort of, in these categories, I think it can be really helpful. So working with a vendor can be easy and it cannot be easy. I might even do a totally separate video on that, but it's important to know that that is an option. And any contract information depends on, if you're purchasing the software or not, but those are things to consider probably for another video. So when we do testing, these are sort of just the basic items that we look at. And your testing, especially if you're new to testing software for accessibility, it doesn't have to even be this complicated. But just being familiar with navigating a page and having an idea of what's going on behind the scenes can be helpful. Alt text is a big one, and it's something I think that's pretty easily, it's something you can pick up pretty easily and understand how it works and how to look for it. Links are very easy to identify and sort of judge. Headings and ARIA regions can be a little bit more difficult if you don't understand HTML, but I think it's worth looking into, and again, we can make another video on that. And so on. I've got things to look at. So that's sort of how we do things. And yeah, just wanted to show that. I want to make a series of videos that sort of go over testing and hoping that it'll be helpful. That way we can go over specific examples. So I will see you in the next one.